Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. Today we're very happy to have with us Caitlin Madden from Metro West Collaborative Development, who's going to be giving us the big picture about what her organization is about, affordable housing in general, and then we'll focus in on the 5 Auburn Street work that they're doing. Um, and as we put in the announcement, there is a whole formal public process for engagement on that as well. So we're certainly welcome to ask questions specifically about the project, but it isn't completely a public debate. It's Caitlin's come to our group to chat with us about it. We're really appreciative of that. Ganesh has also joined her, which is good. So let's start as we usually do with very brief introductions of ourselves. So Caitlin and Ganesh can understand who we each are, and then we'll turn the program over to her. Let's start with folks at MetroWorks. Martin, who have you got there?
That was Bill. He just walked in.
Hi, I'm Bill Ramage. Generally interested in what's going on in the community. I'm on the Community Preservation Committee, so involved that way, and interested in hearing what you have to say.
Martin Kessel, kind of co-host here. A lot of relevant boards. I'm chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee, which of course is one of the partners on the CPA, and town meeting member for many years. Caitlin's our guest speaker. She'll introduce herself in a second.
Steve Evans, Historical Commission. I'm also in the CPA, CPC, so I'm very interested in this project as it proceeds.
I'm Cindy Bates, 5-year resident of Natick. Real steward, keep it beautiful, sound and spirit.
Ganesh Ramachandran, 10-year resident of Natick, chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Also work with Martin on the passage of the Community Preservation Act.
I'm Judy Dixon. I'm the housing equity advocate at Family Promise. And I don't know if it's you that's on our calendar for later today, but we're meeting with someone later today. And I've been attending the meetings and big fan of your deep affordability.
And that's it for MetroWorks. Turn it over to
Great,
the
thanks. Paul?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Paul Carew, Veteran Services Director for the town of Natick, and I'm really interested in this subject. I've been a strong advocate for veterans housing. We don't have anything between Worcester and Boston, so I'm really interested in the topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Rick?
Rick Devereaux, town meeting member. I've been following the process of 5 Auburn as well, and I was at the select board meeting Wednesday night at the open part of that meeting. Looking forward to hearing you.
Thanks, Rick. Chris Gentry?
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Gentry, native resident for about 25 years. Just enjoy being here to stay up to date on what's going on in Natick one way, and also very interested to learn more about this topic. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Elaine?
Elaine Ostroff, a longtime disability rights advocate, mother, grandmother, blah, blah, blah.
Thanks, Elaine. Tom?
Tom Daly. I'm 34-year resident of Natick, active member of 350.org, and interested to hear what you have to say today. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Pat?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Pat Conaway, keep Natick beautiful.
Thanks, Pat. Carrie?
Hi, good morning. Let's see, 21-year resident here in Natick, a former town meeting member, coordinate the repair cafes, treasurer for Pat's Keep Natick Beautiful. I do maintenance work at Family Promise and manage a piece of property on Bacon for the Affordable Housing Trust, among some other things.
Great.
Thanks, Carrie. Carol?
Good morning. I'm Carol Berkowitz, and I live on Lake Cochituate, so concerned about the lake, and 50-year residence plus in Natick. Good morning.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Sally?
Good morning, Sally Hopkins. Always love to see what's happening on Mondays. And thank you, Doug and Sarah and Martin and everybody for getting us together. Means a lot to me.
Thanks, Sally. Catherine Doran. Maybe she's away from the computer. How about Brinley?
Good morning, Brinley Vickers. 24-year resident in Natick, also a town meeting member. Generally, just a green activist like many of us here, and I'm grateful for what you guys do and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to hearing today. I'm a big supporter of 5 Auburn Street. Thanks.
Thanks. Catherine Koffel.
Good morning, Select Board, Natick Affordable Housing Trust, and town meeting member for many years. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Doug and I are 40+ year residents of Natick. I've been a town meeting member for a long time, also on the Community Preservation Committee, and absolutely believe we need more affordable housing. So interested in this topic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. And I'm Doug and moderate this group. One more time on Catherine Doran. No, well, hopefully she'll chime in later. So Caitlin, I know you have some materials you wanted to share with us. We usually use the procedure of having folks raise their hands when they want to ask questions. Your choice, whether you want to take those during the presentation or whether you just as soon get through those materials and then open it up for discussion later. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you again for coming.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And thank you, Doug, Martin, and Sarah for creating this forum. It's a wonderful and very unique formal forum so that folks can have conversations about interests, issues of local interest. So I really appreciate you inviting me here today to talk with you all about our work and about our proposal for 5 Auburn Street. I did put together a presentation, so I thought I could share that because I think it's helpful to have materials to look at rather than just listening to me talk. But I do want to encourage people to jump in, with questions. I want this to feel like a conversation rather than a hearing. So please, I invite your feedback and questions as we go. All right, so let me try and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about Metro West and who we are and about our work generally, and then I'll talk more about affordable housing, what it is, how it comes together, what the needs are, and then I'll focus in on our proposal for 5 Auburn Street. I do want to reiterate what Doug mentioned is that we are in the middle of a public hearing process in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So a lot of the kind of in-depth issues around traffic and stormwater, those kinds of things are really the focus of that public process. So we'll cover very light touch on those details today, but if you're interested in the deep dive and the, all of the information that we've provided to the zoning board, I would encourage folks to attend those meetings. So first, just to talk a little bit more about Metro West CD. Again, my name is Caitlin Madden. I'm the executive director at Metro West Collaborative Development. Our real estate team, folks who you've probably seen at our open house events or public hearings, include Sharon Small, our director of real estate, and Chelsea Gaylord, our senior project manager. The real estate team is only one part of our team. At Metro West, we like to call ourselves small but mighty. We have 12 staff members of dedicated housing professionals who bring a lot of passion and a diverse range of experiences to our work. So just a little bit more about Metro West CD. We are a regional 501c3 nonprofit, and we were founded in 1991 to focus on the shrinking availability of affordable housing in Metro West. We are a certified community development corporation, or CDC, and also a certified community housing development organization, or CHODO, which is a federal designation that says that we have a proven track record for creating and owning and operating affordable housing. We are also the only CHODO serving the West Metro Home Consortium, which includes the town of Natick. You can see here our target area map. So we were founded in Watertown, but in 2012, we regionalized. We now serve a 46-town target area in the West Metro region, and Natick is one of our primary target area towns, which is shown here in dark green. So we are focused on affordable housing in three main ways. We build it by leveraging public and private resources to create permanently affordable housing. We connect people to it by working with low-income individuals and families in their search of a housing, and we administer financial and emergency rental assistance. And we advocate for it. We work with community leaders to create and implement programs and policies that support the construction and preservation of affordable housing. Yes.
Can you just explain why the light green, dark green, what makes them different?
Sure.
For you guys.
Right, for us. So the dark green shows our primary target area towns. So those are the towns in which we are most active, either through our housing production work or through our housing programming work. We've administered direct financial assistance programs for lots of towns in our target area. We also serve as a housing consultant to a consortium of towns, including Harvard, Littleton, Stowe, Bolton. It's called the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. So we have a large target area, so it's just a way to kind of indicate the areas in which we're most active.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I guess is that more from the initiative of the towns themselves to come to you, or you approaching the town? I guess I'm just trying to figure out how do you have stronger relationships with certain communities versus others?
Right. So we have spent, many years building relationships in the communities in our target area. And we find the areas where we can be the most successful in serving our mission is where there's overlap between our organizational goals and the goals of the town.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about our work specifically in Natick, because we've been active locally for quite some time. Since 2009, we have conducted affordable housing lotteries. We have also administered a down payment assistance program. We have met with the Natick Affordable Housing Trust on numerous occasions to explore potential affordable housing developments in Natick, including offers to purchase on more than 5 sites. In 2020, we worked with the Natick Affordable Housing Trust, and we won first place in the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston's affordable housing competition for a proposed redevelopment of the Henry Wilson Shoe Shop site. We are also currently the recipient of a Newton Wellesley Hospital grant, which invests $1.9 million over 4 years into a Watch CDC and Metro West CD partnership to address housing insecurity, reducing its impact on mental health, and increasing economic independence through mentorship. The 5-town catchment area for the Newton Wellesley Hospital grant includes Natick. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about our experience building housing. So we build permanently and deeply affordable housing. Our recent pipeline includes our Glenbrook Way development, which is a 92-unit intergenerational campus, which was completed. The second phase was completed earlier this year. It is affordable to households earning up to 60% area median income, with a set aside for households earning up to 30% of area median income. Phase 1 was a family 48 units rental development, and phase 2 was a 44-unit senior development. So serving a broad range of folks at the site. We're also very proud that phase 2 is FIA's Passive House certified. Passive House certification is one of the highest levels of sustainability that multifamily housing can achieve. So we're very proud of that. In Hudson, we are currently in construction on Packard Street Commons, where we are creating 40 units of family rental housing, affordable up to 60% area median income. This project is BS Passive House Design certified. And then we're expecting to get our full certification at the end of construction. But to get that full certification, you have to complete construction, you have to do all sorts of testing, and you have to prove that you've met the standards. And there's a kind of a long administrative process to get to that point. But our expectation is that we will be able to achieve those standards. We are also the developer in partnership with Civico on the West Newton Armory, which is a historic adaptive reuse, where we're creating 43 units of affordable housing. We are currently in pre-development on the project. We are permitted, we have our funding award from the state, and we are lining up for a closing and starting construction early next year. And again, another project where we're leading the way on sustainability, where we are BS Passive House Design certified, which is quite a feat because it is a historic adaptive reuse. So we're very proud of that. I will highlight, yes.
What is the status of the veterans housing at Henry Wilson Park?
Ganesh, do you want to talk about that?
It's been a non-starter. Because it was based on I don't remember the statute. It is like if you use the open space, which it is designated, we have to designate the non-open space elsewhere in Natick as open space, and it requires legislative intervention, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's great in concept, but if someone can give us the car ownership site, I'm sure we can build something very similar.
I see Pat Conaway also has his hand up. You got to come off mute, Pat.
Well,
there you
go. The income threshold again on making things, defining them as affordable housing. What is that again? I've heard 30%, 50%. What is it exactly?
That's right. So the income standards for affordable housing are based on AMI, or area median income. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means and how that translates to rents and income levels in a little bit. So
okay,
I will definitely for that, sure. Okay, and I just wanted to highlight here that both our Hudson and our Newton projects were town-owned land where the city or town issued a request for proposals. Both were very competitive processes where 8 other developers responded. And in both cases, we were selected as the most qualified and our proposal as the most advantageous among the group, which we were very proud of. But that is a similar circumstance to 5 Auburn Street, where it's town-owned land, and kind of putting forward executing on a vision by the town for the future of the town-owned property.
That's a question.
Sure.
So, given the economics of building affordable housing, can you ever build affordable housing these days when you have to pay for land? I'm not talking about $1 and $100.
Right. No, it's very, very, very challenging. And I am going to talk a little bit more about the financing for affordable housing, just so people really understand, the complexity and the challenges that we're dealing with. And so both Hudson and then West Newton Armory, the city or town conveyed the land to us at a nominal cost for $100 because, it's very difficult for nonprofit affordable housing developers to acquire property on the open market, especially in such high cost areas where we work.
And just to give some context, if we are, purchasing a single family home, for $1 million. I'm assuming the land cost is probably 40% or something like that, just kind of empirically speaking. So you almost need, I mean, just on top, like 40% or 35 to 40 subsidized to even make anything, like, even have the possibility of building affordable housing. And then, of course, there's a whole range of other subsidies we'll talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I think that we keep referring to 5 Auburn Street as a once in a generation opportunity, which we really and truly believe, in part for that reason. Because it's one of the only ways in which we can actually, create affordable housing.
Who owned the land for the Medway project? How was that gained?
Sure. So that was a market acquisition. So the town of Medway, they were very interested in creating affordability. Their town was rapidly gentrifying. They had a lot of folks who were being forced to move out of town. Maybe tell a little bit of a side story here, but one really interesting example. There was a couple who lived in Medway for 40 years, raised their kids there, were important parts of their community. I'm gonna try not to get too off track of the original question here. But when they were ready to downsize, they couldn't find housing options that met their affordability needs and their accessibility needs. So they had to move out of town. They bought a small condo a couple towns over, but their friends, their life, their places they got their haircut, and the place where they did the grocery shopping, that was all in Medway still. So when Glenbrook Way was under development, they realized that they had an opportunity to move back to the community that they loved. And they applied and were able to secure an apartment, and they moved in earlier this year. And they say that it's, their forever home, and they're back in the community where they spent most of their lives. So anyway, so there are a lot of people in that position. So the leadership in Medway really wanted to create housing opportunities for those folks. The town of Medway did not have any town-owned land that was appropriate for development, because even if you do have town-owned land, a lot of times there's constraints around ledge, or there's no water sewer, there's lots of reasons why property isn't appropriate for development. So Medway didn't have any town-owned land that was appropriate. So their leadership actually looked for sites with my predecessor. They drove around town and tried to find something in the market, and they were able to, and that became Glenbrook Way. First, there was an acquisition of a small parcel, and then the town wanted to create more housing, so additional parcels were purchased by Metro West.
Okay, so you bought that on the market.
Yes, Medway is a different market than Natick.
No, I get it. I just was curious about other ways that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, and we have lending institutions where we borrow our acquisition funds to purchase property.
And I think Rick also has his hand up. Eventually, we'll let you get off this slide, Caitlin, but not yet.
Sure, I love it. It's great.
Okay, this question can be deferred because it's jumping into the weeds of Natick, of 5 Auburn Street, and really a question for Bill and Sarah and Ganesh as much. But I'm wondering whether, because I listened to the impassioned speech about the size of the why couldn't the 5 Auburn Street just be in the historical building? Well, obviously the economics of it aren't there. I would understand that. So my question really is there an alternative, and I don't know whether the CPA can help with expenses for land. Land would have to be donated anyway, but if there were expenses for land, or whether they can contribute to building costs too. So that's a question for them. And then the question would be, has there been identified another location in Natick where your affordable housing collaborative could build the extra units that you need? In other words, could it be done, since it's a different construction project? One is historical renovation, complicated, and the other is a building with units. So I'm just wondering, is there any alternative there? And please defer this question if everybody thinks that we're not ready for it. Thank you.
I'll give you the decision on that, Caitlin, but it does sound like something we could circle back to unless there's a piece of it that resonates with this part of your presentation.
That's fine.
Sure, yeah, so I do plan to talk a little bit about the financing and some of the factors that go into our thinking about financial feasibility. And I can talk about some of those, specifics related to the site. So yes, I know that has been a recurring question, and I do have some information here to address those.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, shall I move on? Okay. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit more about, like, why do towns work with Metro West instead of just doing it themselves? Because, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. So we consider ourselves to be a trusted and collaborative partner. We are mission driven. We create deep affordability. We bring a lot of technical expertise to navigating these very complex processes. We're also able to bring in very well-respected, highly skilled consultants, our architects, engineers, sustainability consultants, the many folks that it takes to move these projects forward. We are also able to navigate complex permitting processes and complex financing, which we'll talk in a little bit more detail in a few slides. But it really takes a lot of expertise. A lot of people on our team have been doing this for 20 years, and we still learn new things every day. And it really does take a village to get this work done. Okay, so all right, I want to talk a little bit more about what is affordable housing and the Metro West CD model. So the affordable housing that we create is deed restricted. So that's really important compared to some, what is referred to as maybe naturally occurring affordable housing. People who might own an apartment and rent it at a below market rent. Those opportunities are very few and far between. If you have one of those, keep it. But because it's not deed restricted, the landlord at any time could choose to greatly increase the rents. They could choose to sell their property, and who knows what the next owner will do.
Just one point here. Excuse me. The 40B also has deed restricted affordable housing, but most of them are not deed restricted in perpetuity. So like it'll be deed restricted for 20, 25 years, and then they kind of revert back to the market rate housing, which is not the case in what we're talking here.
That's right.
This is being done as a 40B, but you're saying on top of that, it's going to be permanent.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a technical question?
Yeah.
If in 20 years, those units that were affordable become market rate, then the town has to generate new affordable housing to keep us at, okay, thank you.
And this is one more thing which really like drives me crazy. Like if you have a, the 40B is because you have to have 10% under affordable housing. Let's say if you do a 100-unit development and 15 or 20 of those units are deeded affordable for the next 20 years, all the 100 units would be considered as part of the SHI. Yes.
That's right.
So we got it to pass the legislature.
I missed that. Ganesh, what was it? All 100 units would be considered affordable? What?
They would be considered part of the subsidized housing inventory. Okay. They would be taken. So when you are calculating this 10% of Natick, those 80 units, which could be market rate, luxury, whatnot, would be considered within this 10%.
Because that project had 25% or more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Affordability.
Wow.
Fun math.
I have a question that goes back to when you were starting, and you said that your organization, your nonprofit formed.
Cindy, can you speak up a little bit or get a little closer to the mic?
affordable housing. And when you said affordable housing in that sentence, were you just speaking of including non-deed restricted, like the private people too? Because otherwise, it seems to me that affordable housing is increasing because more and more people are, towns are doing it. But can you just break it out like that question?
Right, sure. So I think that there's, a few issues at play here. There's, the fact of, what can people afford? We know that Massachusetts is one of the highest housing cost states in the nation. We also have some of the highest childcare costs and other costs. So there's just kind of like the boots on the ground for people who want to live here and stay here. What can people afford? And through our housing clinic work, we're hearing where we help people find and secure affordable housing, we're hearing from far more people than we've ever heard from, and people who have never experienced housing insecurity and never thought they would experience housing insecurity. So there's kind of, the basic, what do the real people who live here, like what is their lived experience around housing affordability? And part of the way that we address those needs is through, creating the deed restricted affordable housing, because it's a legal obligation. It carries with the land. And it sets very specifically the maximum rents that we can charge. We are a mission-driven organization, so we want that affordability, yes. But there's literally legal requirements that make sure that we comply with those obligations. So I'm not sure I fully.
So I guess what I just wanted to clarify that when you said at the beginning to address diminishing affordable housing, in that sentence, you're including the private landlord who's doing sub market rent, and those are disappearing. Is that kind of what you weren't just talking about? Deed restricted affordable housing diminishing.
Right.
Okay.
It just is not widely available. Yeah. People are really struggling to find housing that they can afford.
Okay. So that word affordable, like you have to really focus on, are we talking about this kind or just can we
generally affordable in the market?
Capital A or small A.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right. Yes, and that's actually a part of what this, slide is getting to about, what is the Metro West CD model, because there's a lots of different models out there that's naturally occurring, there's public housing, and we're kind of a little bit unique. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was supposed to be admitted, right? George, right? I thought I admitted him before.
I thought you did too.
One more time. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right. So we are deed restricted for affordability in perpetuity. Again, we offer deeper affordability than is typically served under Chapter 40B, which I'll talk about more in a second, at 30% to 60% area median income. It's also privately owned, so as opposed to public housing communities or maybe town-owned properties. It's privately owned by us, Metro West CD. Ideally, it's beautifully designed to fit within the neighborhood context. I know we're going to hear more about this, about 5 Auburn Street, and what folks have to say about our design. But that is our goal, is making sure that we've got beautiful design and that we're fitting within the neighborhood context. We also, the property pays for maintenance costs. So, we pay for trash removal, snow removal, any landscaping, any upkeep that's associated with the property. That is the responsibility of Metro West CD as the owner of the property. Our properties also pay taxes. Oftentimes, cities or towns might decide to reduce the tax payment for affordable housing developments as a way to financially support the developments, but all of our properties pay property taxes, significant taxes. And my assumption is that right now 5 Auburn Street doesn't pay taxes because it's a town-owned property. Yeah. So any increase would be an increase here. We also have really careful and thorough underwriting. I'm going to talk more about the financing for affordable housing, but in a second, you're going to see how complex it is. We often have, 10 to 12 different funding sources, all of which come with their own requirements and their own underwriting. So our projects are really, there's a lot of people who care a lot about the success of the property for the long term. And lots of eyes, reviewing our budgets and ensuring long-term financial success. Our properties are also professionally managed and maintained by a professional third-party management company, Maloney Properties. They're one of the largest and most well-respected management companies in this region. We also build high-quality construction. Sometimes when people think about affordable housing, it has an association with low quality. That's not what we do. We also are climate friendly with high sustainability standards, and we create highly accessible and adaptable housing. I want to talk a little bit more about, outside of the buildings and the housing that we create, some of the kind of ripple effects and other benefits that affordable housing can have on a local economy. So affordable housing is a driver for other revenue. So meals tax, sales tax, vehicle registrations, the whole range of other types of incomes for towns. It also allows local businesses and the town itself to attract and retain staff. It also generates customers for local businesses. There's a lot of great little businesses right in walking distance of 5 Auburn Street. Who can patronize those businesses, work at those businesses. Also, creating diverse housing opportunities has, besides the broad economic impact, it also has positive impact on individuals. And people don't think about it in this way sometimes, which is why I like to mention it. So if you have ever, gone to your favorite local restaurant and waited forever to get your food, or if you have gone into a CVS and the drive-through window isn't open, or you try to call Roche Brothers to see if they have any turkeys left and nobody answers the phone. Through my lens, I see those as housing issues. People can't find a way to live locally, to play those really critically important roles to our local economies. And support the positive function of our communities. Affordable housing development can also be a way to attract additional state and federal resources to town. One example of this is that because of our Glenbrook Way development, which is shown in the photos here, the state became very supportive of funding infrastructure projects in town because Medway was stepping up and doing the right thing by creating affordable housing. That led to a $300,000 mass work grants to create sidewalks in the surrounding area, which created connectivity between the commercial corridor and the residential areas in town. All right, I'm going to keep going unless someone tells me someone's raising their hand.
Nope, you're good for now.
Okay. Okay, so just to talk a little bit more about, what is affordable housing and the needs in Natick. So this is some information based on the housing production plan and the 2030 master plan. So both identify the need for increasing the local affordable housing stock, in addition to increasing housing for the full range of income levels. According to the housing production plan, nearly 1/3 of the town's renters and homeowners are housing cost burdened, which means they pay more than 30% of their income towards housing. That's people who currently live in town who are struggling to make ends meet. When you're paying that much on your housing, it strains budgets for other things like groceries, healthcare, education, and childcare. According to the Housing Navigator, approximately 1,500 SHI units in Natick, approximately 837 of those are affordable apartments. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that difference in a second. And 541 of those are age restricted. So that's a huge portion of the affordable units that are age restricted to a population that makes up a small portion of the overall population. They're usually restricted to people 62 plus. So that's, you know, a small group of people, and they have a disproportionately, you know, large share of the existing affordable housing stock. Leaving not that many apartments for individuals and families. The town's rental vacancy is about 1%, which just shows how tight the rental market is and how high the demand is for those units that are affordable. And I want to talk, you know, this is the data, this is what the town plans say about the need. But I want to highlight a couple of, you know, real stories that we're hearing from people who have either showed up at our open houses or who have written letters of support to the zoning board, and some of the experiences that they're having. So there are people who work in town but have to commute long distances, which means that they're exhausted, and maybe their young kids, you know, are home with, you know, other childcare providers for long periods of time during the day. Seniors who want to downsize but remain in Natick, but there's limited options that meet their budget and their accessibility needs for aging in place. Parents with adult children who want to return to Natick to build their families. And those parents who don't necessarily want their children living with them. They love them dearly, but maybe having separate living spaces is a good thing. And also parents with adult children with accessibility needs who would be able to live independently if they could find an apartment that met their mobility needs. These are some of the, you know, real people that we're hearing from right now in Natick who are interested in more diverse housing options. Okay. So the slightly deeper dive, and I've been talking for a while, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but I'm going to keep going. Okay. So just another note to piggyback on what Ganesh was saying about Chapter 40B and the subsidized housing inventory. So the idea behind Chapter 40B is that it eases housing production by creating streamlined local zoning regulations in communities where less than 10% of their housing stock is counted as affordable on the subsidized housing inventory. Natick is currently below 10% on the SHI, but interestingly, when we were selected as the developer for 5 Auburn Street, Natick was above 10% on the SHI. So to me, that kind of demonstrates that, you know, we may or may not have met the 10%, but we still want deeply actual affordable housing in town. 40B requires that 20 to 25% of units are affordable at 80% of area median income. But as Ganesh mentioned earlier, in a 100-unit development, 80 of those units are market rate units, 20% are deed restricted, but all 100 count towards the SHI. So a lot of people say, oh, we've met our 10%. We must have adequate affordable housing, which I think is a reasonable assumption to draw if you don't dig into the details. But if you do, you realize that there's an awful lot of market rate units counted in that number, and there's a lot of needs that aren't being served. The other nuance about Chapter 40B is that when market rate developers create affordable units, it's typically at 80% of area median income, because that's kind of like the baseline of what's required. Most will just do that to meet the requirement, but they're not going to go deeper. But 80% of area median income in our region is very high. For a one-person household, that's $91,000 out of reach for many, many people.
Question.
Sure.
You're saying that 100 unit, the whole 100 count. Has anyone done the math to see what, if you counted as 20 for all the ones that are mixed, what the actual percent is in native?
Right, so this, I think that this previous slide gets to that. So of the 1,500 units, and the town planning department will have the latest and greatest numbers of all this. But so there's 1,500 units of on the SHI, only 837 of them are affordable. I don't have a further breakdown on if all of those are at 80%. My guess is that the vast majority is.
So that brings it down to more like 6%. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah.
You might want to think about how you PR on that.
I know
Pretty scary.
it's shocking. I think that
Yeah.
most people don't understand it, but
I
you know,
certainly do. Yeah. Thank you.
sure. And you know, 40B was a tool to create more housing, which is a really important part of the housing landscape. Is, you know, eventually, you know, the idea is that supply helps, you know, lower pricing, but that's slow. And you know, I'm sure there was some trade-offs that needed to be made at the time and the legislation was passed.
I have a question, but I think I won't remember until you go back to the slide we were on.
Sure. Oops, let me.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, I had a quick question. You had said that we are now below the 10%. And I drive around town and I see, I'm sure everybody does, a lot of small houses being torn down and big, giant, expensive $1 million plus homes being built. Is that a primary driver of what's pushing us below 10%, or is there something else going on as well?
So if you have a single family home and it's demolished and another single family home is built, that's kind of a wash in terms of housing supply. But if you build a lot of housing, that increases the denominator, right? So as you build more housing, it's kind of a constantly moving target. And there are, you know, properties that are permitted that have an affordability component to them. So once those are finalized, they will increase the SHI, but at the same time, more units are being built. So it's kind of it needs to be constantly monitored, and that's the town planning department keeps a track.
So the Affordable Housing Trust, we work with the planning department and an organization called RHSO. So that's the Regional Housing Services office or something like that. So it is a consortium of like 10 towns. Natick was a so they do the monitoring, they look at the deed and they do the work because oftentimes planning departments don't have the staff capacity. So the trust has been paying around like $20,000 to $25,000 each year to help cover their expenses. So we are working with them and we are even meeting them like next month. So.
Just to clarify a bit on Sarah's question, though, at least when you say that it's a wash, I guess I don't understand that, because if a smaller, older home is torn down and a newer, larger one is built, the newer, larger one is significantly goes on the market at a significantly higher price than the smaller, older one did. So isn't that replacing a more affordable home with a less affordable home?
But it was a small A.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Small A, all right, all right.
Was never counted in the subsidized housing inventory.
Sure, sure.
But that still, I think, could be driving. You said you're seeing more people coming to you for help than ever before. To me, that is a component of what's driving that. If I could afford $500,000 for a house, and that $500,000 house has been ripped down and $1.5 million house has been built, effectively, there's something that's not on the market that I could have afforded. And so to me, that is a piece of the puzzle. And I don't know what if anything could be done about it, but it does seem to me that is a piece of the puzzle here.
It also affects the median household income rating that determines it, correct? When it's because it takes someone making a lot more money to live in $1.5 million house than in a $500,000 house.
That's right. Yeah.
So I know that over here at MetroWorks, Cindy has had her hand up for a while. She's very quiet in the corner. And then Caitlin, I hope we can get back to the presentation.
Sure.
And then through the rest, I know there's a lot of questions.
Yes. So my question has to do with the 80% AMI. And you were saying that some developers use that level and they don't go deeper. are you talking about rent? And can you say what does 80% AMI translate to for rent versus 30% or 50% rent? What somebody for a, say, a 1-bedroom apartment?
Yes, absolutely. So let me,
And maybe you're gonna get to that.
I am gonna get to that.
In which case, I'll just wait.
Yes, I am. And I'm realizing I've got like a lot of slides here.
Just keep going and we'll get to it.
Yes, that's a really important question because when people say affordable, it means a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
it's important to be specific. And I wish I'd gotten that more upfront here.
That's okay.
So, but yes, we will certainly get to it. Okay. All right, so just, talking more about affordable housing and what is the process. Usually, the motivation and the idea comes from local folks. They do the housing assessments, they see the need, they say, we want to do this, it's part of our vision. And then comes finding a specific site. So, typically it's securing housing control and the site control, excuse me. In the case of 5 Auburn, it was already town-owned land. There's some work to create, to think about site feasibility and to create a request for proposals. That's typically done by local leadership with technical assistance. And then it comes to, once a developer is selected, hopefully a mission-driven nonprofit developer. Then comes design, permitting, financing, construction, lease up, and operate. And all of those things are the responsibility of the developer. Sometimes there's some confusion about who does what, if it's town-owned land, like OSCD to do versus the town. And then once it's all done, we celebrate and begin again. But I mainly want to highlight, how long these projects take, which is part of the reason, part of the factors that is contributing to the shortage of housing supply that we're experiencing as a Commonwealth. Small project, even just 32 units can take 4 to 6 years from start to completion. So I just want to have folks understand the level of effort and work and diligence that's required to get these projects.
Have you ever done any project in 4 years? Maybe we should have time to revisit this.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. We've been really fortunate. We've had really positive community processes in our most recent projects. And we've moved basically as fast as you can move through community process, through the zoning board. We've had incredible amounts of support.
Market rate housing takes 4 years these days, even
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, in Hudson, we'll get to the 4-year mark. So
Awesome.
and that's fast. That's crazy that is fast, right? Okay, so, all right, so finally, the moment that you all have been waiting for. 5 Auburn Street. So again, we're just starting this very comprehensive, deep dive into the project at the zoning board, where we're going to be going into lots of detail. But I just, the little pieces that I'm going to talk about today are things that have been discussed with the zoning board. And I just want to highlight kind of the big picture. So again, we're creating 100% affordable housing. All 32 units will be available to households making up to 60% AMI. Historic preservation, we're going to preserve the Elliott School, a treasured community resource. And we're not just going to keep the building. We are preserving it in accordance with the Department of Interior standards for the rehabilitation of historic properties. That's a big deal. That process takes a lot of time, a lot of consultants. It's really thoughtful work, and we are committed to doing that. Open space, we plan to maintain the lawn at the corner of Elliott and Auburn Street. That offers really important historic sightlines to the Elliott School. There were also other proposals in response to the RFP that, built buildings in that location. So it's a big part of the site, but we were, committed and remain committed to preserving that open space. Sustainability will be incorporating energy and efficiency improvements for the existing building, and we'll be pursuing Passive House certification for the new construction building. We will also be making significant improvements to the site stormwater management to benefit the Charles River. There is currently zero stormwater infrastructure on site. So all of the rainfall washes across the existing parking lot and flows towards the Charles River. So that is a really significant improvement to the site and to the health of the river. And I will say, again, once in a generation opportunity for town-owned land, these projects are not possible if we have a significant acquisition cost. Okay, I'm sorry this is so teeny tiny, but this is getting to a lot of the questions that I've asked around, oh, that's too zoomed. Okay.
No, that's great. Oh, that's much better. Yeah.
That was better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So here you'll see the maximum income limits, which are set each year by the U.S. Department of HUD. So they'll change each year, but they'll be set once we are actually leasing up the property. And also the sample rents. And we have some example folks who might live at Auburn Street. So a retired senior receiving the average monthly Social Security benefit paid to retired workers would qualify for a one-bedroom apartment.
Just want to give a shout out for their website, 5auburn.com. It's a really impressive, frequently answered questions, like all these questions and everything else. It's very detailed. So if you have questions, I would strongly recommend you to check out the website.
Brinley has also put the link to that in the chat so people can get it, and I'll include it in our follow-up email as well.
Can I show you okay on time? I want to make sure you
I'm just waiting for a call. I might leave after 10 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you for being here. I want to make sure that you get a chance to say whatever you want to say before you have to run out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then a quick example for 60% area median income. So qualifying family would be a family of four. One parent is a full-time experienced Natick high school math teacher earning $70,000 a year. The other works part-time as a retail associate at the Natick Mall and provides childcare to their children. They would qualify for a 3-bedroom apartment. So here you see the maximum income limits at each of these levels of affordability and the bedroom size. And I do, the 60% area median income rents are, I imagine you all understand that these are far below market rents. I also want to explain the 30% rents so that households that live in the 30% units would receive rental subsidy. So they would pay 30% of their income, whatever their income is. So that might mean that they pay $100 a month. It might mean that they pay $1,500 a month, but it's based on their income, and then the subsidy pays the remainder between the rent and what they can afford to pay. So that's why there isn't a rent listed here. It's really based on household income.
And the 60%, is that 60% of their, sorry, can I ballpark a 30% 1-bedroom using the 60%? Or how do I?
Right, so say if you have a 1-bedroom apartment, to qualify for the unit, you could earn up to $73,000 a year. And then your rent, based on about 30% of that income, would be about $1,800.
Okay. So So if I'm making $30,000 a year, 30% would be $900 a month, with $9,000 a year? Okay.
Right, okay, and then you would put that income would qualify for a 30% AMI unit because
Yeah.
you would be below the 36,000. And you would just pay the 30% of.
So that's
income.
750 a month, something like that.
I think
Okay.
you're faster at the math than I am, but yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds about
sounds
right.
right.
That's just, that's
Caitlin?
what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I make 80% of AMI, I will not be eligible for any of these apartments, right?
That's correct.
But you will be eligible for other.
Many,
Yeah.
oh no, I get
Yeah.
that.
Caitlin, I forgot to ask you at the outset too. Can you make a copy of this presentation available to me so I can share the full thing with at some point?
I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I do have a few more slides here. I know that we're already past 10 o'clock, so I'm gonna keep. I don't know. Okay, sorry. Here we go. Okay. I just want to highlight this because and I just talked a little bit about the affordability. I want to talk about like the design and the neighborhood context because we've received a lot of feedback about density and the size of the building. And this view was really compelling to me. And this is something that the zoning board reviewed at the last hearing. This area is actually there's a fair amount of existing density. As you can see here, off of Pleasant Street, there's, sorry, I'm not doing a great job with my mouse here. Oh gosh. There are commercial buildings that are, 3.5 stories tall. We have the beautiful churches, the Riverbend School. So the surrounding area from this view, I think really highlights that they're, within the context, there are other similarly sized buildings in the immediately surrounding area. So it felt like this view was pretty compelling in telling that story. And then a couple of other views, and I apologize, these are hard to see from a couple of different vantage points. And design and density are really topics for the zoning board discussion. But I do want to just show people, what it looks like because I think people are really surprised when, and I'm sorry, my zooming here is making it so we can't see it all. Okay. That when you're standing on Elliott Street, the new building, you can see a tiny little peek of it here. I'm not sure if folks at home can see my pointer.
Elliott Street is Route 16. Okay.
The new construction building is really obscured behind the Elliott School. This was, surprising to me, and I'm sure to other folks that it really is not visible from Elliott Street. It really lets the Elliott School shine through as the kind of design feature of the site.
On that last slide, where you have the trees there shadowed in, I would make another picture that shows them unshadowed.
I was making the same
I
suggestion.
observed that at the meeting the other night and thought another view. I think that's escaping a lot of people who look at this.
Yeah.
Those 4 houses along that street, show them what it's gonna look like for the trees that you're gonna put there.
Yes.
Obviously, they're deciduous and November to January might.
So the white building on the left at the top, that's the new building? Okay. Okay.
No, and this is, we have to say, a very preliminary first pass.
Yeah.
Designs evolve,
Sure.
and thinking about texture and color and relationship with the other building.
Yeah.
And all those things are to be developed, but why don't you finish and I'll just make my comments there.
And then on the bottom slide, behind the trees, those are houses that are there now.
This is the Elliott Church. That's an existing building.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you.
It's not beautifully rendered here.
Yeah,
It's much
good.
prettier in real life.
Well, there's a steeple that makes it look more like a church, and somehow it's being obscured, but yes. It's actually not the main building of the Elliott Church, it's their other building, which was a smaller church that they acquired.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. That's right.
I see Carrie's also got his hand up. Carrie.
Yeah, just real quick. I don't have any question. I just want to say wonderful presentation. I've been in the background writing, taking copious notes. And Ganesh, just want to say it's nice to see you. It's been some time, and well, your input in this whole process is really amazing. Wow, I'm privileged to be, part of your little network there. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, I'm gonna continue because I hope I don't have that many more slides. I do, wow. Sorry, I wanted to be thorough. I think there's probably too much information here, but I'm gonna try to breeze through this and leave some more time for questions. Okay, so our project budget. Again, this work is really complex. We have to weave together 12 different funding sources. This kind of lumps some of them together in different categories. But our estimated project cost is about $21.8 million. You'll see here that the Natick Affordable Housing Trust has agreed to provide $600,000 in funding to the project, but that's a very significant contribution, but it only makes up 3% of the project sources. And that allows us to leverage all of the state, federal, and private resources that are needed to make this project possible. And again, I think that this highlights the need for town-owned land because, we have to put together all of these sources and we have a very reasonable acquisition price. The process for funding these projects is very time consuming. There's one big funding round a year, so it's really important for us to be competitive in that funding round. There's so many projects out there that are asking the state for funding. So the more we can do to show local support and for the project, the more likely it is that the project will be funded. Otherwise, it'll take us a while to get there.
Just about that $600,000, that's what the Affordable Housing Trust has pledged, and we have already paid $200K towards pre-development costs. And we don't really have $400,000 in our bank balance. We pledged it because we anticipated some in lieu funds from market rate housing who are not providing the affordable housing. They can pay a dollar amount.
Buy their way out.
So we are hoping the Wendy Low project would come about because unless they pay that, they won't have their certificate of occupancy. But we have not gotten any signs of when that will be finished and any of those things. At some point we are hoping we'll see those funds, but this is where our friends at CPA are going to be very valuable because by statute, 10% of those funds have to go for Affordable Housing Trust, just as the Historic Preservation and Open Space Committee, and we may need more than that to make these things happen. And just to provide some context, a day job, I work for the state, I work for DCAM. For those who are not familiar, it's the state's asset management and agency who constructs, builds, renovate all state-owned buildings. We have to go with union labor, public procurement laws. There are strict statutes of how and who we hire to get our buildings built for the Commonwealth. And the going per square footage rates we see are anywhere from $500 per foot to all the way to $1,200 per square foot for court buildings and trial courts. So what Metro West is doing is close to $350 per square foot. I was kind of couldn't believe it. You can't do that if you are a nonprofit developer, if you are a non-governmental entity. So we are getting really good value for money here on a per square foot basis. 21 million seems like a lot of money, but it's really not in the current inflation and construction rates and labor pricing and all that stuff. So just put it out there.
Yes, thank you.
I had one question about this, and apologize if it takes us slightly away from 5 Auburn Street, but just where the largest component of this is federal money. Has there been any assessment at how much riskier that source is going to become, given the change in Washington?
Yes, there is. So I can talk, there's a number of ways that federal funding impacts 5 Auburn Street. So as you can see, the biggest federal source that we have here is the federal low-income housing tax credit. That is the #1 tool for creating affordable housing across the country, because there's, not a lot of direct investment from the federal government to build housing. That program has really broad bipartisan support. So that program feels very, relatively safe because of that bipartisan support. I was just on a Novogradac webinar the other day, because we're all kind of grappling with what these changes might mean. My understanding is that also that this federal historic tax credit has very broad bipartisan support. Some of our other sources of funding, so the West Metro Home Consortium, home funds are federal funds. These funds have already been allocated to the West Metro Home Consortium. So our hope is that they are safe because they've already been allocated. The other federal funds that would impact our project are sustainability and green energy incentives. We think that those are probably also on the chopping block under the new administration, but we have not been underwriting those savings yet, because we still have a lot of work to do to figure out, feasibility of solar, given what our rooftop equipment, where it goes, and how much space we might have available. So our budget is not currently relying on those incentives. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things happening, but I do feel like we've got a state that is incredibly supportive of housing. So any of the kind of gaps, along the margins, my expectation is that the state is going to help move projects forward.
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. In my work life, I'm now retired, but I did environmental reviews for thousands of these low-income housing tax credit projects over the years. And we did see them go steadily through multiple different administrations. The only thing that did seem to have a major impact was in the recession, where you had the confluence of trouble in the housing industry, the construction industry, the finance industry. We had multiple clients that we would review these for, and our work dried up substantially on that front during that period. But from my experience with this, it's more a economy-driven thing than an administration-driven thing, hopefully.
I apologize, I do have to run, but just want to make a final comment. I truly understand why the immediate abutters may be like very upset at this development. People's primary wealth is in their home, and they may feel like, this is going to create a loss of the property value. And people feel what they feel. I mean, there are, studies and research which says, high quality affordable housing doesn't actually reduce the cost. It actually increases. It's marginal, about 0.09 to 0.11%. But sometimes it's very hard to make rational arguments when things are emotional and you feel like your way of life is being endangered one way or the other. But it is a once in a generation. You are not going to see another 32 unit development in Natick for a long time. Definitely not in Route 16. I don't see any land anywhere there which lend itself to affordable housing development. So I think it's really important for the ZBA to hear your voices. I mean, many of you have written letters, really appreciate it. But when there's a room full of 50 people who doesn't want this to happen, even having a handful of voices which says, you can acknowledge, what the neighbors feel, but I think it's really important to put our town in the community, and because there's going to be a lot of checks and balances in terms of building heights, environmental impact, traffic impact. I mean, not only there'll be findings from the consultants of the developer, but the ZBA is also going to have peer reviewers, a second set of consultants, an extra pair of eyes to vet these findings. So any voice of support you can lend to this process would go a long way in like trying to push this maybe like less than the 6-year mark we talked about. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh.
Before you leave, I put in the link, the planning board, but if you know the dates offhand of the next planning board meetings where this will be discussed, if you wanted to give us that information, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Here we are. All right.
Yeah, we'll certainly put that in the next email, but these
Yeah.
December.
I can add those to the chat if Caitlin wants to.
Great, okay, yeah, and there's standalone meetings just for 5 Auburn Street. They're on Monday evenings at 6:30. So yes. Okay, I've got a little bit more content here. So I'm gonna keep going until someone tells me to stop. So thank you for your time today. So we've got a lot of questions of, can't you just build fewer units? There are good answers to why that is not possible for the project. And I'll go through, a couple of those here. So, part of it is efficiency in building housing. So the state has caps on costs per unit. Many costs are per development. So larger developments are more feasible. So one example of that is, every project, no matter how many units you're creating, is you need to do a survey. That survey is going to cost $25,000. So if you have 10 apartments, that's $2,500 per apartment. Or if you have 40 apartments, the per apartment cost is much lower and it's much more efficient. So that's on some of the kind of, upfront cost of creating the housing. The other piece of it is efficiency in operating rental housing. And I know that people in the community feel it's really important to have high quality operations and maintenance of the property over the long term. And the same kind of principle applies during the operations period. So if we have an elevator and it's $8,000 a year to keep it up, that's $800 per apartment if there's 10 apartments, or $250 per apartment if there's 40 apartments. So the ability to support the cost of covering the baseline needs of the property is really impacted by the number of units. We knew that less density would be desired here. So we really sharpened our pencils. We typically require at least 40 units to make a development feasible. We felt like 32 was the absolute minimum number that was supportable for financial feasibility, and we were clear about that during the RFP process. I also want to address.
Can you just say how many are in the school building and how many in the new building?
Yes, 9 in the school building.
Okay.
And the remainder in
okay. And 32 altogether. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
I also want to address, one of the comments that we've heard in a couple of areas is that the size is really driven by profit motivation on the part of the developer. I just want to, emphasize a couple of points. One is that we're a nonprofit. Any costs any fees that we receive through our housing production goes to cover the cost of our staffing. As you just saw, it can take us 6 years and 3 people or more to get these projects even started. So it goes to cover, staffing costs and the significant risk that we take on as an organization, because we provide the guarantees on the construction loans, on all of our loans. It's a really serious endeavor. Also, the state has capped developer fees at a level that they think is fair compensation for the level of effort that is needed to make these projects happen. So we don't have the flexibility to just decide, we just need to make more money on this. It's set by the state. So we are not profit motivated. We are mission motivated. I also, want to make sure that people understand that 5 Auburn Street is really unique. Some people have pointed to some other projects that are mostly market rate, where that might be examples of things that might be possible. But the 5 Auburn Street site is really unique. There's significant costs of the historic preservation. We have to create stormwater management, which is, you know, a significant amount of site work that would be required for any development. There's significant hazardous materials abatement that needs to happen, and permitting costs, and all of these, you know, unique costs need to be offset by the number of units. So, you know, we have thought carefully about this. This proposal is based on our expertise and our knowledge of how all these programs work and the needs of the property.
Thanks, Caitlin. I do see both Carrie and Rick have their hands up. I know we're also running tight on time. Carrie, and can make it quick. Or
Yeah, I do have a question. I've been invited to attend a little meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust at Morse Tavern about a year and a half ago. Ganesh was there, Randy Johnson, and there was a fellow who spoke up about the plot of land adjacent to the AMVETS building there on the lake. And he thought that that might be an ideal place for affordable housing, especially for vets. Was that just merely a pipe dream, or is there any any possibility down the road that that parcel of land could be, you know, turned into something?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I was shown that by the veteran that is doing that. Ganesh would probably have something to say, but he's gone.
Yeah.
That's a really strange piece of land because it was part of the Lake Cochituate State Park. And all the land around the lake is part of the state park. That was sold off to the veterans like 30 or 40 years ago, which required an act of the state legislature. So it's kind of strange to be selling that off land from.
why don't we stay on 5 Auburn if that's the area we know about it, and we can direct that question to Ganesh maybe offline. So
really being part of Lake Cochituate, so I think that would have problems. But that's a longer answer than we probably have time for.
Okay.
Yeah, Rick, something about 5 Auburn, or you're on mute, Rick.
Thank you. I was just curious for a ballpark of what, you know, with 12 people, you do an amazing amount of work, which requires a lot of expertise and experience. I was just wondering what your total budget is. That's not related to 5 Auburn. So, and if you don't prefer to answer that, I'll live.
Do you mean just our operating budget?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's all, you know, publicly available. We're happy to talk about it. We have
Okay.
about a $1 million annual budget. So that, you know, includes our staff costs and our programs and all of the services that we offer to the community.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks. Other well, materials you wanted to prepare or present, Caitlin? We've certainly enjoyed this. It's been like a fire hose of information.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize. It's a complex subject, and you've educated us a lot.
Yeah, I will quickly. Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to invite you to kind of make any closing remarks or things that you wanted to say that you hadn't gotten a chance to yet.
Absolutely. So, you know, this was just to cover all of the process to date. This started back in the fall of 2022. There's been a lot of process so far. Yeah. A lot of work has gone into this proposal. We've had a lot of, you know, community engagement. I do want to just highlight for people that we do have a series of upcoming zoning board meetings where we will be talking about environmental impacts, operations, traffic, other areas of where people might have questions and concerns. And we just really need to hear from people, you know, whether you are supportive of the project, that's great. Please show up. People need to hear that. If you have questions about the project, please come to these meetings because we will be going into detail about to answer those questions and to really look at the traffic impacts and talk about the other concerns that folks have. But it really, you know, the project becomes better when everyone participates and the broad range of viewpoints are heard. So I just want to, in closing, just say, as Ganesh mentioned, we have a project website, 5auburn.com. There's a whole list of frequently asked questions about noise, about native species, about light pollution. That's a great resource for folks. You can also, if you scroll down on that homepage, you can sign up to follow our progress. So we send out emails when there's upcoming meetings or other things coming up. So if you want to stay up to date, please sign up there. Okay, I see a bunch of hands.
Yes.
Yeah, let's start with MetroWorks.
Yeah, we got a few over here, but we got a few out in cyberspace as well, so.
Right. Well, it looks like the MetroWorks ones are up first, so let's start at least with one of them there.
I'll take the post prerogative. Yeah, the big issue I've heard from the neighborhood is really scale. I think they're from the last hearing, they're pretty comfortable with they seem to be comfortable with affordable housing, but only to the extent that it would fill the existing school building, and it's the extra construction that seems to be the problem. And how do you address the issue of scale, the fact that there are 4 houses on the street now, and it would be essentially 32 more units, kind of overwhelming that neighborhood as they perceive it?
Sure. So I think, we've talked a little bit about, the reasoning behind the number of units that we need to to sustain a financially feasible community for the long term. In terms of, this idea of overwhelming the street, that's really around, traffic and parking. We've done an in-depth traffic study about the impacts on the street. That study has said that the existing street in terms of width and other things is adequate to support our proposed development. But all of that will be gone in great detail with our traffic engineer and also peer reviewed by the town's traffic engineer. So it's not just us saying, trust us, there's not going to be any traffic. It's actually people who do this for a living and have the real expertise to explain, why there won't be an impact. So if you have questions around, the traffic component, I encourage you to attend the zoning board hearing.
Okay, we have one more question over here from Cindy.
So I had a conversation with somebody who lives on Leech Lane, where she tells me she has to wait 10 minutes at 6:30 or 5:45 to turn right on Route 16 to get up to Natick Center. And it seems to me that it's not it's not even really proximate to the proposal, but can the town, can that somehow be involved where the town will say, okay, well, we'll put a light in, so if somebody stops here, it makes the people be able to come make that turn for that particular neighborhood, because that was her primary concern. But she's already dealing with traffic sheet that's really making their lives hard. And then the other thing she mentioned, which I was like, oh my goodness, was archaeology. And is there a cemetery there from Native Americans? And I know that the state has a law that once you start digging, if you find stuff, you're required to call in archaeological consultants and whatnot, and so forth. Just wondering if you have any inkling that might be an issue at the site.
Right. So, regarding the traffic and congestion, we've definitely heard that there's existing issues. People are going to be tired of hearing me say this, but our traffic study says, that our project won't, additionally contribute to the existing issues. But again, we have seen housing development as a catalyst for, attention on existing issues and investment and finding solutions. So I'm hopeful that, with all of this feedback, that there might be some adjustments that can be beneficial to everyone. On the archaeological front, yes, absolutely. This is a very sensitive site. So we went through the process of submitting a project notification form to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which describes the project and also requests permission to do some very sensitive exploration to see if there are any archaeologically sensitive artifacts on site. That work was performed earlier this spring. People were out there hand digging. It was quite a production. And so the results of that study have been completed and submitted to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and they have said that there's no further exploration that's needed. So we did not find anything, you know, the graves. I've heard that people in the area have. So thank you. Sure.
Good.
And
Yeah,
all of the
thanks for those
tribes,
answers.
excuse me, all of the tribes were notified of that work prior to the work taking place and have been provided with the copies of the report. So we've been in close communication there.
That's cool.
Thanks. Donna, I'm gonna come off mute.
Yes, sorry. I'm getting worried about this project now, and a lot of hard work went into the idea of the proposal, getting the proposal proposed. How worried, I mean, I've written a letter. How worried about this do I need to be that it could be derailed?
That's a question. You know, I really hope that that's not the case, you know, but this is the moment. This is the moment where we're having these important community conversations. And if, you know, folks who have questions about the project, we need to show up. And Donna, it sounds like your fear is that the project is derailed, which is wonderful. So thank you.
I think
yes.
though, like, because you do this all the time, and we as community members don't.
Yes.
So is this out of the ordinary in your process experience? I think that's the only way that you could clarify that, right?
I see. Yes. So it is not uncommon to have questions about traffic and density and to have you know, folks in the neighborhood who have concerns. So our hope is that as we move through the zoning board process and as we provide the information and the good answers, that people will come to understand it better. But this is not atypical. But we do need, you know, if you're supportive of the project, we do need to hear from you.
I understand it's not atypical, but have you actually had projects derailed at this stage by neighbors and NIMBY people?
I personally have not. So, you know, it would be a real disappointment, obviously, and a real challenge. But I think we're not, you know, we're not there. We're just at the very beginning of the stage. We know that, you know, the first hearing was a difficult one, but it was the first of many, and that was not unexpected. So I guess, you know, this is not atypical, and really just encourage people. Every meeting matters, every voice matters. You know, please come out and if you have questions, hear the answers. If you support us, say that, great. And if you need to learn more, please come and do.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We just need to help you through the building permit process. Then thank you so much.
Thanks, Donna. And just one add-on to that. Is it correct that, I mean, the approval for this rests with the zoning board with appropriate input from the citizenry? Is that correct? I mean,
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar to difficult select board decisions that, okay, cool. Brindley, you had your hand up.
Yes. First of all, thank you for this incredible presentation. That was so thorough. It's wonderful. And I guess maybe I just wanted to speak to everyone as a whole more than a question. I know for myself, showing up sometimes is daunting and intimidating because you don't feel that you have the same words or ability to speak eloquently or appropriately to the matter at hand. But I can say from my own experience going that oftentimes it's as much important to just have the warm body in the room and to be able to raise your hand and say ditto when someone is speaking for instead of against. The against side right now is extremely motivated and organized, and they are bringing people to the meetings. And I do believe that probably the town as a whole is more on the side of for. That's just my gut feeling, but people are afraid to show up. So I would encourage people to ask your friends, even if they can't come to all of them, just to come to one of them if they are for this development. And you don't have to say anything. You can bring a little ditto card and hold the ditto card up when somebody speaks positively for it. So you don't actually have to get up, but being there in support and not hostility is a great way to do it. So if you have other friends that you could organize for that, I do think, affordable housing is important to spread out around the town and not have all in one location. It's better for the people living in those environments. It's better for the town as a whole. I am personally very for this, and I hope that others will come and support. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that, Brinley. That's good advice for us. All right. Well, it is after 10:30 now. So again, I want to thank you, Caitlin, for super informative presentation. And if you can share the PDF or PowerPoint or whatever form you have with me, I will make sure that the entire group has that available. And I think given that this session has been recorded, I think a lot of us should feel free to share the link to that recording to those, because it was a terrific presentation.
Very informative. Thank you.
So thanks again for coming.